Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Kati Anything. Today I am joined by the amazing Dr. Judith. She is a psychiatrist, researcher, educator, mental health advocate, and author of the book High Functioning, which we will dig into. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote High Functioning last year, probably in the writing process?
Well, it was published this year, but I started writing it about 2 years ago, around the time that I was really looking at data from a study that I published this year, actually, right before the book came out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's the first study in the world on high-functioning depression that's peer-reviewed. And the reason that I wanted to write a book about this was because I run a research lab. A lot of times people don't care about research. They just feel like it's boring and it doesn't apply to them. But high-functioning depression is something I think everyone needs to know about because we all go through periods where we may become depressed or not experience joy. So I wanted people to understand a bit about the science behind why we feel this way.
When you say high-functioning depression, what do you mean by that? For people who maybe aren't sure, how would you define it, either clinically or just personally?
Well, clinical depression is when you have these symptoms of depression, such as low energy, poor concentration, food doesn't taste as good, you're tired, you don't enjoy things. But then at the very bottom of that checklist, you either have to have impairment in your functioning, so you can't do things as well as you used to because of the depression, or you're in significant distress. But there are many people who have all those symptoms of depression, but they actually continue to function. They still show up to work. They still take care of their kid. They're still the entrepreneur. They're still the performer. They wear a mask to hide their symptoms. And many of them experience something called anhedonia, which is a lack of joy, a lack of interest, a lack of pleasure, kind of like meh, blah. And so if you go to your provider, you go to your doctor or your therapist, and you have all these symptoms, but you still function or you overfunction, and that's your way of coping, they're going to say, well, you don't really meet criteria for anything until you break down or until you're in crisis. So when you're in crisis or when you break down, then come back and then we can diagnose you.
Which is such a shitty way to be. Like, you have to wait till you're doing terribly to actually get help.
Well, imagine if your cancer doctor said, come back when you're stage 4 cancer, right? You'd be like, where'd you get your medical degree?
Yeah.
But in mental health, we wait until people break down before we do something. I wanted to change that. I want us to think in a preventative way, in the same way that your cardiologist would be like, here are the risk factors for a heart attack. Let's prevent it. I want you to know what the risk factors and the signs are of depression so you don't break down, so you're not in crisis, so you can do something about it to reclaim your joy.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know why it is that we treat that way, but we do. We have to wait until you meet every criteria and check all the boxes. So the research that prompted the writing of this book, what does it show? Like, tell us a little bit about it, because I do love research.
Well, so the research showed that a lot of these individuals who cope with, their struggles are outrunning or thinking that they're outrunning their past pain. So when you classically think of trauma and painful past experiences, most people, they avoid these things. They avoid reliving them by avoiding people, places, or situations, right? So they don't want to be around the person that triggered the pain. That's the way that they avoid dealing with it. But folks who are high functioning avoid dealing with their pain by taking on a lot of work, right? Or taking on a side hustle, right? Distracting from it. They're the ones who have familiar. They're the ones who can't sit still on the weekend, right? Instead of relaxing, they're cleaning out their garage, they're taking on a side project, they're taking on someone else's problems. They just feel so empty when they sit still. They feel restless when they're not busy. And they don't know why. So they just are humans doing instead of humans being. And many times what we found in the research is that people don't even acknowledge their trauma. They don't acknowledge their pain. They're like, well, that happens to everyone. I just kept going.
The minimizing.
They
and
do.
I do find too, because I had a book that I wrote it came out in 2021. I wrote it in 2020 of all the times, called Traumatized. And I found that a lot of people think the word trauma is like too heavy-handed. Like, it almost like we put it in this sphere of like, I have to have gone to war, I have to have been abused as a child over and over, or in a horrific accident, versus it was more than I could process or manage at the time.
Well, the reason they think that, it's largely due to the medical field, right? Because PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in the Bible of Psychiatry, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, it says that your trauma has to be either life-threatening or combat, or you have to witness somebody in some gruesome, act or something like that to meet criteria for trauma. So the medical literature tells us, well, this is a trauma and this is not. But, during 2020, I had people coming into my office saying things like, I lost my business. I think I have PTSD. And I'd be like, well, according to the textbooks, you can't.
Yeah, but we were all traumatized
Yes,
with COVID.
right.
And I feel like a lot of people want to and minimization and validation makes sense because it's like helps us push forward. Oh, it's not that bad. I'll keep distracted. I'll keep myself busy. I can keep going. When in fact, it was like, it's overwhelming.
It is. And you can have some of those fight or flight responses, even if it's not the textbook trauma. And it's invalidating when we tell patients this. Like, patients will come in and say, I had a toxic ex and he ruined my credit, and I couldn't get an apartment. And then I'll be like, well, according to the DSM, that's not trauma. But I'm having nightmares, I'm having flashbacks, I'm having hypervigilance. You're having all the trauma responses, but your trauma doesn't meet criteria. So what I say off the record
terrible
is
to say, right?
It is.
It doesn't meet criteria.
Well, in the research, we have to record and we have to,
check
film
all the
it,
boxes,
and we can't enroll patients in these studies. But off the record, I'll say you don't meet criteria for the study, but I believe you. I believe that your psychological pain has led to these responses, and it's shaped the way that you view yourself. It shapes the way you interact with others in the world, and it's significant. And I consider it trauma.
Yeah, and I think that's really, the validation piece is so powerful. It's part of being like, you're a psychiatrist, I'm a therapist. We both spend time with people, right? We're in the business of helping people. And I think there is that the feeling of, I hear you, I see you, it's important. Yes, that's a big deal. I feel like it's like half the healing sometimes for individuals, especially with something like high functioning depression, where it's your life is fine, you're fine. I always call it like white knuckling life, because it's like you're barely hanging on, and then the second you get a chance to not, I just have to rest, or I have to crash out, is like the new, people talk about that a lot. Or I keep myself so busy, I never have an opportunity to feel anything.
Yeah.
Like you said, being versus doing.
Right. You're a human doing versus a human being.
Yeah.
And the white knuckling, I'd add a layer to that. You're wearing gloves because no one can see it, because you're covering up with this mask of pathological productivity. And people are saying you're killing it, I remember at points in my life when I was going through high functioning depression, people would be like, oh man, Judith, you're killing it. And in my mind, I'd be like, I think it is killing me.
Yeah. Seriously, though, because it can look, and that's almost like what I call the Instagram effect.
Yeah.
And it obviously applies across the board, but it's like things can look one kind of way, but the true reality, only the person in it really knows.
Yeah.
Right? And you knew you were not you.
No.
You were just surviving. You weren't thriving.
Exactly.
Even though on the outside, they're like, look at you doing so well. Well, and you were, but not really, at what cost?
I think social media has made it way more easy to live with high functioning depression, because you see these pictures, you're posting a picture, everyone's saying, oh my gosh, this looks so great, you're so great. So you're gaslighting yourself, and you're like, well, actually, maybe it isn't so bad. Maybe I should be happy.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're just portraying this idea of happiness, but you're missing out on the experience of joy. And that's why in my lab, in the happiness lab, we do a lot of research distinguishing the two. We explain that happiness is this idea. People come in, they're like, I just want to be happy. Well, what is happiness to you? Oh, it's when I get that partner, or I get the house, or
when I
get the job, right? They're still not happy when they get the thing that they think will make them happy. It's an idea. It's dependent on the external. Joy is the opposite. Joy is the experience. It's okay when you're tired and you took a nap, did you feel rested? When you were lonely and you reached out to a loved one, did you feel seen and heard? It's those tiny experiences. But we're so busy chasing happy, this idea, that we're missing out on the experiences of joy.
So fascinating, because, I feel like happiness is, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. It's almost like a societally created thing. And I even personally have caught myself in this too, where I'll think it needs to look a certain way, when happiness hasn't really, joy. Has nothing to do with how my life looks or the things that I have. lived in LA for 20 years. And so I know they had horrific fires this last year. I thankfully did not live there at that time. But prior to, almost every year, we'd have to pack up things in our home to prepare for evacuation. And I remember the first time I had to do that, how like eye-opening it was to all of the random shit that I spend so much time thinking is important and valuable, and I worked hard for that, and blah, 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 meant zero. When I was looking at the things that I needed to pack up, it was photos, it was hard drives with photos, it was my husband and Art and the dog. That was it. That's all that mattered. Right. And yet you can spend your whole life thinking you need to have these specific things to make you happy when really none of that was valuable.
Yeah. I saw a meme. I can't remember which podcast, but it was Mark Cuban. He says, if you're not happy when you're poor, you won't be happy when you're rich, right? And I love that. And I don't know if he came up with the saying, but it's so spot on, right? Because he's talking about the material things, the things that you hold your breath, you delay living to obtain. And then when you get them, you're still feeling empty. You're still searching. And if you can figure out a way to access those points of joy, no matter what your surroundings, not that your problems are all solved, but if you can do that, then he's right. You're going to be happy no matter what's happening in your environment. And when I studied cultural psychiatry around the world, I'd go to these countries where sometimes like these people had nothing, like they would have barely, things to eat, and yet you could still find people laughing and dancing, and their problems were still there, but they were able to access joy in those tiny moments. And it led me to think, well, why is it that we're built with the DNA for joy? Because joy is essential for survival. It's essential for resilience. It's essential for resistance. And you think about slavery and all of the problems that have happened in the past, in terms of human survival, joy was needed to survive those extreme obstacles. So that's why it's built into our DNA. We just forget how to access it because we're so busy chasing this idea of happiness.
Yeah. Do you think in the effort to find happiness, it's like we're too focused on this, I don't know, like ever moving goalpost that we don't tap in to?
I think so.
To the small joy, like even something as silly as like I got up and I felt rested. I hit all the green lights on my way into work.
Yeah.
I was able to pack a really good lunch, or my friend wants to go out to lunch. Like all those little moments, is that kind of more what we should be seeking?
I mean, I've seen
seeking the wrong word probably.
Well, I've seen it across the board in just about every type of patient. Where I practice, I see a lot of executives. And some execs will come in and they'll be like, there's this big acquisition, and if we just get it done, things will be better. The acquisition happens, they make millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. And then it's like, well, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Well, we're thinking about this other merger. And I'm like, hold on. Did you even celebrate that? What did you do with your team? What did you all do collectively? Oh, well, we congratulated, people got bonuses. I was like, well, how did that feel? And people they don't even register. It's always after the next thing. So with a lot of these clients, what we do is we spend a lot of time just like focusing on, well, what was the part of that whole experience that brought you true joy? Where did you find meaning? And it was in the connection. It was in the team building, right? So how do we tap into that? And it doesn't have to be just the wealthy, right? Even with my students that I work with, they're always like, okay, if I just get this graduate degree, if I get this A, and if like my ADHD meds are, adjusted just right so I can focus. And then they get all these accolades, they get into the grad school and they're still feeling empty. Well, what was it about the process that you truly enjoyed? What brought you meaning? Well, it was the curiosity, it was the knowledge, it was the actual learning. So let's not put that aside. Let's not chase the idea of happiness, the picture. Let's chase the experience of joy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by Babbel. Have you ever chosen a travel destination just because you wouldn't have to fumble through a language? Yeah, me too. But with Babbel, that language barrier doesn't have to hold you back anymore. Babbel is built to help you start speaking a new language confidently and quickly. Its lessons are based on real-life conversations, so you're learning practical phrases you'll actually use, not random vocab you'll forget tomorrow. They offer over 14 languages, including Spanish, French, Italian, even Swedish. I've been brushing up on my Spanish lately. I used to be fluent, if you didn't know. And Babbel has made it so easy to get back into it. One of my favorite features is their culture bites. Those quick insights make everything more memorable and more meaningful. The best part, lessons take just 10 to 15 minutes a day. You can seriously fit them in while waiting for your coffee to brew. Babbel was created by real language experts and backed by science. Studies show that just 15 hours with Babbel is equivalent to a full semester of college-level language learning. Wild, right? So if you've been thinking about learning a new language, whether it's for travel, a potential move, or just for fun, I've got you. I've teamed up with Babbel to give you 55% off your subscription, but only for listeners at babbel.com/Kati. That's BABBEL.com/Kati. Babbel.com/Kati. Rules and restrictions may apply. Start your language journey today. Babbel, language for life.
So let's not put that aside. Let's not chase the idea of happiness, the picture. Let's chase the experience of joy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how do you, when you're working with someone, because I can already sense the comments coming in of questions about this, is like, if someone's like, yeah, I do, because I chase too. I feel like I'd be lying if I'm like, oh, I do, but I know better. I don't always do better. That's the curse of being a mental health professional.
Yeah.
I can get caught up in the next thing and the next thing. So are there like tangible steps or ways for us to maybe try to slow down, or what are some of the tools that you find to be the best and most helpful in these situations?
Well, the motto of my lab is understand the science of your happiness. And the reason that I say your happiness is because there's only one Kati, there's only one Judith in the future of the universe, in the history of the universe, like only one you. So why are you chasing the idea of someone else is happy? Understand what's making you unhappy. Where do you lose your points of joy? We're constantly thinking, oh, I just want to be happy. But where are you losing your joy every day? And I put this thing called the Bio-Psychosocial Model in the book because it's something that many people in healthcare learn, but the majority of the population has no idea it exists. Like literally in all of your write-ups, there's a biopsychosocial.
I was like, I'm familiar because it's always in every treatment plan. It's in every assessment. It's always there.
Poll your patients.
Yes.
99.9% of them will not even know what you're talking about. You can write it up, spend hours, days, and they'll be like, what? Biopsychosocial? I didn't see that in there. It's just beyond me. We spend all this time writing these flowery reports and no one reads them. So I train my patients how to do them themselves. So when you think about a biopsychosocial, it's almost like a fingerprint. No two fingerprints are identical. Everyone has one though. Well, most people have fingerprints if you have hands, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that, no two biopsychosocials are identical. So think about the areas of your life using this diagram. And it sounds complicated, but everyone can do it. Biologically, where are you losing your points of joy? So biologically, what are your medical problems? Personally, I have a thyroid issue. So if my thyroid is imbalanced, I'm going to notice it, For others, it could be perimenopause. For others, it could be autoimmune, depending on what your physical makeup, your medical history, your family history. Understand where you're losing your points of joy biologically. Psychologically, we all have different traumas, different attachment styles, different resiliency factors. What are your past traumas that are holding you back? I always use myself as an example. Personally, I came to this country when I was very small. We had very little. So a lot of my past scarcity, it kind of weighs on me and my decision making. So I'll fall back into these periods where I'm like, I'm not making enough. And even though here I have enough, here
your body doesn't forget the experience, right?
I don't ever want to run out. So I have to constantly re-examine and process that personal trauma. But for someone else, it could be an attack or something else that happened to them. Or attachment trauma. And then socially, what's happening in your surroundings. I live in New York City, but you live in a more rural area. What's in our environment that's impacting and taking away from our joy? For people who live in the city, maybe we don't have access to nature. Or for those who are in more rural, spread out places, they don't have access to as many people. Some people are, in really unhealthy job dynamics or unhealthy relationships, or they don't get enough movement, or they don't get the right type of nutrition. What are the social things? Are you drinking too much? Are you smoking too much?
Yeah.
All of those are the things in your surroundings that could be pulling away from your points of joy. So using this model is really, I think, very special because many times you think of happiness as being, okay, I have to just do one thing and one road to happiness. But when you look at the biopsychosocial, there are all these different avenues to becoming happy, right? So you can work on the biological, you can work on the psychological, you can work on the social, or you can decide to focus on an area that I think is more important. So like if you have an autoimmune condition and it's making you tired and inflamed, then maybe that's where you need to focus your efforts first. And then you can work on the other buckets. But let's say psychologically, if you have severe PTSD and you're constantly in fight or flight, well, maybe you need to work on calming that fight or flight, because it's hard to access joy when you're revved up all the time. Or socially, if you're in this toxic relationship, you're physically healthy biologically, psychologically your past is okay, but your social settings are just, this person's draining your joy points, then that's where you need to focus. So you can see how like a biopsychosocial could be super strategic, because you can figure out where you're losing your points of joy, and that way you can support those areas best.
Yeah, and I love that too, because it's not one size fits all, which we know never really works. And also I feel like it's very, not just tangible, but it's like I can do something about this. It's very empowering. That's the word. Because I feel like in therapy, as an individual who's been in therapy and someone who's been practicing for way longer than I'll admit, is that a lot of times it can feel like it's this long road. Like I have a lot of people in my community who have trauma in the past, and they're like, oh, to like process that is taking me years in therapy, and it's kind of getting better, but it's not all the way there. And this is like, well, maybe if you have you have really bad allergies, maybe you should find a way to treat that so that at least that's not impeding your ability to feel excitement about springtime or summer or being outdoors, and you can do more of that or whatever. I feel like it makes it more achievable.
It does.
And I just love that, because I think sometimes, especially in the happiness realm, it can always feel like it's just unattainable. So would you tell people you shouldn't be seeking happiness at all?
Well, I would say reframe it and try to seek those points.
You're such a therapist.
I am, right? Reframe. But it is more attainable. If you're like chasing this idea of happy, you may never get that. And that's a reality for most of us. But if you reframe it and you're like, wait a second, I can get a point today or 2 points tomorrow, that's doable. And it gives you more hope. And even in the suicide literature, many times if you tell these suicide patients, like, let's say the goal today is to just go for a walk. And you're just going to go for a walk and you're going to get a point of awe, because you're going to walk and you're going to see trees and you're going to see a bird. And you're going to be like, wow, nature's beautiful. And you experience a point of awe. That's one point you had today that you didn't have yesterday, versus let me just be happy and all my problems go away. That is largely unattainable.
Very black and white, all or nothing.
Very all or nothing thinking. So I would say, points of joy is the way to go. And to your point about allergies, if you're listening, don't poo-poo that, because the months where there have the highest suicidality are actually April and May, because the scientists think that that's the case because of the allergens. So what happens is that during those months you have high allergens, high pollution, high pollutants, and high pollen and so forth, and that increases inflammation. And those are the months that people tend to be more suicidal. So
so it's not that a small thing.
It's not a small thing at all.
Well, and I feel like in general for a lot of us, if there's even inklings of suicidal ideation, it often is that last small thing that almost like pushes us over the edge, really. And so, of course, if you're feeling more agitated and you go outside and you just feel awful, it's going to make it that much worse.
And you're not getting sleep.
Yeah.
So your judgment's clouded, your mood is off, your thinking is different. And absolutely, we don't know what causes suicide. It's one of the most, I think, enigmatic things in all of medicine. But we can mitigate risks. We can ease the pain. And like you said, if you have other areas that you can work on it, right? Not just one area, not one straight and narrow, but if you're gonna, I'm gonna work on my allergies, I'm gonna decrease that inflammation, then decreasing that biologically allows you to open up the social, because then you can go outside more and experience joy and experience awe and experience connection, right? And even get that physical activity in to release the endorphins. So you're opening up that bucket, that segment of the biopsychosocial. So it's all connected.
One area definitely ripple effects into others. It's almost like when people say, there's like the memes that I love that are like, they say it's all in my head, but unfortunately I live there too, and it's like your body, your brain, it's all connected. So if we are ill and not feeling well, our resilience will be lowered. We'll be more apt to maybe lash out at somebody, get into a fight with someone we love, and things can just kind of spiral. And I will speak I love the idea of like finding moments of joy, because personally, I had a really tough year, probably high functioning depression if I was to like pretend to diagnose myself. I was in therapy and everything, and I don't know if I had a diagnosis, but the difficult time I had finding happiness, just felt like I couldn't get out of it. It almost felt like it was just this unattainable thing. Like I felt trapped, I guess is the word that probably felt the most real to me. And it wasn't until I chose to try to find little glimmers of things going well for me, or, oh, how exciting. Like I walked my dog and look at her little tail. She's so excited to be outside, and like just paid attention to those. Instead of taking it for granted and taking like, a flashlight and highlighting it and be like, no, acknowledge. And this is just this is internally, but I'm like, Katie, you need to acknowledge that this is like a good day and it's not too hot yet. And, you get to take the dog for a walk, and how amazing that my legs work. Because I used to do, as a random thing, I specialized in the treatment of eating disorders and self-injury. That was like all of my clinical work. And one of the things that I used to do is this group called the Body and Soul Group. And essentially what I'd have the women in the group do is write love letters from their body to their soul and vice versa. And I feel like we take for granted so often that certain parts of our body works. And like I can sit here right now, I can see you, I can talk to you, I can understand what you're saying, and we can have this conversation. How amazing, and we often overlook little glimmers in our life because we think that something bigger, something better is gonna, be the fix-all.
Yeah, it's being present from what you're saying.
Which is hard. Very
hard, and you have to practice it. But being present allows you to be grateful for like those little sensations, the connection that you feel when you're speaking with a group of people, and being grateful for that. And when I see these memes like, oh, gratitude, a little bit of it is fluff, but a large part of it is actually being present. Because when you're present in a moment and you're eating your food, instead of like shoving it down your throat, you're like, ooh, I like the way that soy sauce tastes. Like, oh, I like, if you do like the roll on top of the sushi, like, oh, it burst in my mouth. Yeah. And so sometimes with my patients, I'll be like, I'll give them an assignment. And clearly, if it's not like a patient that's struggling with food, but like, to just be present in one thing. And so a lot of times food is easy because there's so many sensations there. But for others, it'll be like, when you go for a walk, I want you to describe as many sensations as possible, like the wind on your skin, the sun on how it feels, the heat, like looking at the flowers, looking at kids running in the park, all of these things. And you're retraining your brain to stay present in the moment. Doesn't mean your problems aren't there, right? But it's this metacognition of like, the problems are there, but I'm still here too. And the problems will exist, but I'm here too. I'm existing. And I've done that on myself. I've had to retrain my brain.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
And they call it like the monkey mind, where it like jumps from branch of idea or thing to another. And I feel like that definitely is very real. And I feel that I feel like social media makes it harder. I found out something interesting. I don't know if you've ever done the Artist's Way. I think you'd love it. So the Artist's Way is like a 12-week program. It's a book and you do it on your own. But every morning you're supposed to journal. You're supposed to do morning pages. And I'm a huge supporter of journaling. And so I was like, awesome, this is going to be amazing. About maybe 10 minutes into my journaling, I'd find myself reaching for my phone. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm supposed to do this. Yeah. And then it's like whenever I would stumble into an emotion I didn't want to feel or a difficult realization, like the numb out, that urge. And I think it is difficult to stay present. That was me not wanting to be present. That was me being like, check out, time to zone out and like scroll on Instagram or whatever, versus acknowledge that like, that's just a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of people, I think, experience anhedonia, the lack of joy, because of their phones. In fact, there was a study out of one of the Texas schools earlier this year, and they took the smartphone capacity away from these phones. So you can only use it in the way that an old flip phone worked. Like you could text,
back in the day.
Call. Yep. You couldn't get online. You couldn't be on socials. And what they found, and these were 18 and older, these weren't even kids. What they found in these adults is that after 2 weeks of having that basically flip phone, their scores of happiness went up as if they were being treated with an antidepressant. I mean, that's how significant it was. So what they found was that because they were not on their phones as much, they were eating their food and like tasting it and savoring it. They were connecting with others. They were sleeping better, right? Mm-hmm. They were out in nature more. They were getting more movement. All of those points of joy, right, that we measure in the science, they were getting more of those points. So it just goes to show that those little points matter. They add up to being overall happier. But if you're numbing, if you're not actually living, if you're avoiding, you're not going to achieve those points. You know, you're chasing happy, but you're not actually getting those points of joy.
Today's episode is sponsored by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I used to dread opening my phone bill. It felt like every month there was just some surprise charge I didn't see coming. Switching to Mint has been such a relief. I'm getting premium wireless for just $15 a month, and the service is just as good as what I had with my old provider. Except now, I'm saving a ton. Honestly, I use Mint Mobile, and you should too. Mint Mobile plans start at just $15 a month. You'll get high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, all on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, you can keep your own phone, your own number, and all your contacts. Ready to say yes to say no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/Kati. That's mintmobile.com/Kati. Disclaimer: upfront payments of $45 are required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
But if you're numbing, if you're not actually living, if you're avoiding, you're not going to achieve those points. You know, you're chasing happy, but you're not actually getting those points of joy.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I mean, we know our phones aren't good for us. You know what I mean? Like, I can feel it. Like, even the fact that I was drawn to it in emotional discomfort is just weird. It's almost like I was running my own study and didn't realize, you know? And like, it's so interesting and that's the numb out, but it's also supported, you know, and it's like it's part of my job now. Yeah. It's part of your, you know, we have to post kind of thing. So you have to engage. Do we find, I don't know if you know this, but the connection that people have online, is that at all as good as the in-person stuff? Or are we able to get those little joy bits?
Well, you know, a lot of the loneliness literature has shown that having connection is important. So during the pandemic, you know, when you're not able to connect and you didn't have that, people were suffering as if, you know, they were saying that loneliness was like as bad as having a pack and a half of cigarettes a day. Like that's how lethal it was.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, having connection is better than not. That being said, being one-on-one is very different than being virtually. What we know is that when people connect in person and they actually have physical contact, the hormones such as oxytocin go up, the bonding hormones, all those things, the biochemistry changes at higher capacities than if you were to just be on, you know, like a platform. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, sorry.
You're okay.
So it doesn't replace it. It's better than nothing. But we also know that children are not developing the way that they should be. People are not interacting the way they should be because they're on screens. There's an entire center called the Stanford Zoom Fatigue Research Center.
Interesting.
And they study the effects of having these meetings virtually. Now, it was out of necessity, right? So what they found with the Stanford Zoom Fatigue Center is that people were getting distracted by looking at themselves. You know, think about it. It's not natural to be on a meeting, looking at your face and the face of like 10 other people. Mm-hmm. We were designed to look at each other, to judge whether or not you're safe or you're responding well to what I'm saying, or maybe you like me or maybe you don't. We were designed to judge other people, to get feedback from others, not to scrutinize ourselves. But our brains are overloaded with information, looking at ourselves, scrutinizing like 10 people. Even when you're in like a regular board meeting or a regular meeting, you're around a table, you're not looking at 10 people at once.
No, it's
right?
one, maybe two, because they're right next to each other, but it's really one at
and
a
even
time.
Then you're moving. You're like,
Yeah.
It's just very unnatural to be looking at all these people, staying still, you're performing, your stress goes up. And so no wonder these calls are draining. You know, you don't feel good after them. And sometimes we dread them, you know? So there's something very unnatural about being on these platforms all the time. Now, we need it, but we don't need to be on it all the time. It should not replace in-person interactions.
Well, yeah, it's part of the reason why I do only podcasts in person, because I feel like it's just not the same. And I was just talking to my friend, Dr. Ben Ryan, before you, and I was telling them that I hate doing Zooms because I want to look you in the eye, because that's how I get feedback about how the conversation is going. And do you feel like I'm asking, I'm asking the questions that you want, and is this interesting? But in order for it to look good in a recording, I have to look above you into the camera. Yeah. And I hate that so much. And it just removes a little bit of connectivity for me in a conversation. And that's why I just don't do them that way. Yeah. And so I'm not surprised. And I used to tell, it's interesting that back in the day, this is like pre-COVID, but I used to tell my eating disorder patients, because of body dysmorphia and the way that like they would only look at themselves in meetings like that, as I would tell them, put a Post-it over it. I want you to cover up the part that shows your face. And I was like, because otherwise it's only going to make you feel worse. Yeah. But that's interesting, because a lot of people, you're drawn to yourself. Like, oh, is my hair? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. You look and you pay attention, and we're not meant to do that.
Yeah. And well, even in our fields, we depend heavily on body language. Not to say that we judge people, because when I create content around, like body language and movement and clothes, people are like, oh, well, shouldn't you just be judging people on what they're saying? No, there's something called the mental status exam.
Tell us about that. Because people don't know about that, but I work in the hospitals. Yes. We always do those.
We have to look at the way that your eyes are moving, right? Because your eyes moving tells us about whether or not there's paranoia, or maybe there's hallucinations, or maybe there's uncertainty, or maybe there's OCD, or maybe there's neurodivergence, like a whole set of things. And that's just your eyes.
Yep.
We look at your hands. We want to see your fidgeting, whether or not there's ADHD, picking. I mean, nervousness, tremor. We learn so much from hands, whether or not your hands are crossed or open, whether or not your legs are splayed, or tight. All of these things give us information. And it's not that we're basing your diagnosis just on that. We're adding it up to what you're saying, your thought process, your past, your progress. All these things go into this one meeting, and that gets lost over virtual meetings. In some cases, we can't help it. But I try to tell my patients to come in at least twice a year, at least, because I want to see the full body.
Especially with eating disorder patients, they'll wear like 4 shirts and a sweatshirt, and I won't know that they've lost weight. Yeah. And I won't notice that they're fidgeting as much, or how their hygiene is. When did you shower last? Like, you can put a slick back ponytail and make yourself look kind of put together, but like, how are you doing? And there's so much that's missed. And whenever I talk about it too, my audience is like, oh, damn, calling me out kind of feeling. But I'm like, it's not even a calling out. It's just like, it's half of the conversation is verbal, and the other half is in body language and overall being, like how you show up for the world is important. And I think as a therapist, as a mental health professional, we'd be remiss if we didn't take that into consideration and put the value on it that it deserves.
I just did an interview with a magazine about ChatGPT and the therapists. And, one of the things I said was,
everybody wants to know what we think about that.
Right. Well, I personally, I'm a sci-fi geek, so I personally think one day they will totally take over. I just feel like that's the future. My favorite movie is The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
And Terminator 2, my 2 favorite movies of all time. I think they will take over. I don't think it's there yet. Right now, the way that it's working is you can't just talk to an algorithm and get all those rich experiences that you would from a one-on-one therapist, right? You're going to put in there a biased question. You're going to get a biased response. This algorithm doesn't have the full picture as to, what you were like in the session before, and during the therapeutic model, we're basically jumpstarting your development. We're attaching to you a lot of the themes that play out in your home life or in your past life with others plays out in the therapy. So being on an algorithm one day and then hopping on another day, you're not getting that full rich picture. Now, one day I think we will be there. We're not there yet.
Yeah, and I agree. I've been asked a lot about it too. I think because people are just curious, what do you think? And I share a lot of your thoughts about it and beliefs about it, because I think that right now I see it as a way to journal with feedback. I don't believe that is able to challenge us when we need to be challenged, because it was made to keep us happy, right? Like it was created to please us. Like you said, you give a biased question, you get a biased answer, where a therapist, a psychiatrist, a mental health professional would know if you said something like that, I'd be like, interesting, I'm curious where you came up with that question. We'd have those like annoying side reframing type of questions to try to understand really, what are you trying to get from me? What is it? What's the validation you're seeking? What is it you're really fearing or that you're worried about? And I don't think it's quite able to do that. I'm not opposed to it. Like I always tell people, if it helps you and it feels like, because journaling can feel one-sided, and some of us need a little bit of like, I hear you, like just empathy, then that's fine. But I don't think it will get us where we need to go.
No, I think it's great for psychoeducation too, depending on whether or not it has the correct sources, right?
It can sometimes make up things.
Yeah.
And you're like,
or pull from websites that are not validated.
yes.
So if you ask a question like, oh, what are the symptoms of XYZ? Well, you're going to get that from the algorithm. So psychoeducation, basically learning about something in mental health, may be helpful in terms of that algorithm, but you also have to check your sources, because you could be getting it from special interest groups. You can be getting it from, maybe some pharma companies that want you to take their meds, you know, so you have to be careful with the psychoeducation part.
Agreed. I've talked a lot with my audience about my own struggles with people pleasing. And before I even get into it, you guys know people pleasing isn't about me pleasing someone else, it's about my discomfort with someone else's upset. But how do you see people pleasing and perfectionism maybe amplifying, or I don't even know if you think it's like a cause for high functioning depression?
Well, in the book, I talk about an old term that we don't really use anymore called masochistic personality disorder. It's a very controversial term. And when most people hear masochism, they think like sexual masochism. It's not that type. It's the type of basically bending over backwards when you're sacrificing your own pleasure, your own interests for others who don't necessarily reciprocate it. But masochism is a little bit more devious than that. It's more of like you're inciting others to treat you poorly. And that's why the term was removed, because a lot of times in the past, people who were victims of domestic violence were seen as masochistic. Like they did things, they ended up in these situations where others treated them poorly. And we know that's problematic.
It's like victim shaming.
Yeah, it's victim shaming, victim blaming, and it's not politically correct.
Yeah.
But there are elements of masochism that, it's essentially what we call people pleasing today. When you do for others who don't deserve it, you bend over backwards and you shouldn't be. You don't think you're worthy of certain things that you are deserving of. And so you're basically self-sabotaging, or you're not accessing what you deserve because of inner unworthiness. And a lot of people please because they don't realize how it's tied to past pain. One of the 30 plus symptoms of PTSD is this undeserving, low self-worth. Like, I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough, or I must have done something where I don't deserve happiness. And if you're not aware of that, if you don't recognize that connection between your past trauma and the low self-worth, then you continue to people please. You do for others because you don't believe you deserve it. And I want people to recognize that before they make decisions where they feel maybe uncomfortable, where they feel stretched. Then, well, why are you saying yes? Why do you keep pouring into this person when you are not getting it in return? What is it about them that deserves it and you don't deserve it? And so understanding where this comes from, or potentially comes from, I think is a really important step in changing those behaviors.
Does perfectionism play into this as well? Do you find that feeds into it?
Definitely. A lot of the clients that I work with will say that if I make mistakes, I'm not worthy of love. It's like this magical thinking that you typically see in children. I work with children and adults. And one of the trauma responses that I often see in kids is, well...
Today's episode is sponsored by Headspace. Have you ever had this conversation? You meet someone and you say, hey, how are you doing? And without thinking, you just reply, I'm good. You? Well, I decided that when I say I'm good, I actually want to mean it. And that's why I'm using Headspace. Back when I lived near a meditation center in Santa Monica, I used to go regularly. And I have to be honest, it really helped me. But when we moved, I didn't have that option anymore. I still wanted a way to keep up my practice. And that's when I started using Headspace. Headspace helps me and over 100 million people take care of their mental health with guided meditations, mindfulness practices, breathing and calming exercises, and more. I've noticed less stress, better sleep, and an overall boost in my mood. Even if I only have a few minutes, the on-the-go programs help me reset quickly. And with over 1,000 hours of exercises, it always feels like there's something just for me. So if you want to feel good and actually mean it, try Headspace. For a limited time, get it free for 60 days at headspace.com/askkati. That's HEADSPACE.com/askkati.
And one of the trauma responses that I often see in kids is, well, if I had just done this one thing right, dad wouldn't have left, or my dog wouldn't have died, or, this bad thing wouldn't have happened to me. It's this
children
magical
so often
thinking.
because they don't have any other understanding, so they put themselves in the role of the responsible.
Yeah, it's their way of trying to contain a situation. Like, if I just had done one thing, it would have been okay. Because it's scary to realize that actually you could have done everything right and bad things still happen to you. Because then it makes you feel like
out of control.
Yeah, you're not in control. The future's too uncertain. So it's a magical thinking, which is a coping mechanism to contain a situation, so you feel as if maybe you have control over the outcome. And that's why a lot of adults with trauma they end up putting themselves, or seemingly putting themselves, back into situations that are not ideal. Like, someone may see someone going back to the same person who's cheating on them. And you're like, why are you going back? Well, it was so painful that my only way of containing the situation was to put myself back there, hoping that this one time they wouldn't cheat, right?
Oh, it's like, I want a different outcome. It's like we're
Correct.
giving it another chance to work out differently. Because I do hear a lot from my audience that they're like, why do I keep, and it might not be the same person, it could be, but a lot of times like, why do I keep finding myself in these types of relationships with these abusive partners or friendships or whatever?
Yeah.
They're trying to contain.
Yeah, I see it a lot with sexual trauma too, where it's like, well, if you had a sexual assault, why are you going back into these situations where you could likely be assaulted again? And I explain that it's the unconscious brain's way of somehow having a different outcome. Like, maybe if I get out of this one, I've tricked my brain into thinking that I can contain it, like I can beat the odds. And it's a way that many people don't put it together. But once they realize it, they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's why I'm doing it. But yet the outside world blames and says, well, you must have liked that, But that's why I think we need a lot more education, psychoeducation, with regards to these type of traumas.
100%. Because I think in a lot of ways, people want to make sense of something in the simplest way possible, but that's not always the right answer.
No.
Right? Going back doesn't mean I liked it. Going back doesn't mean that I want it again. Going back might mean I don't know a different way of being, or I don't know my worth. And I think that this is what a relationship looks like. I've heard that from a lot of my patients. They're like, well, I just thought relationships always involve some kind of abuse, really, without calling it that. But like, I thought that was just part of it,
Or even an unconscious desire to control the outcome. That if I just beat it this time, then I have control. But it doesn't work.
So interesting. I've seen that with my patients with sexual abuse will sometimes become hypersexual as a way of like taking back control.
Yeah.
And they even verbalize it to me that way, where they're like, well, I was, and they might even become part of, like consensual sexual acts through like OnlyFans or whatever. But they're like, but that's me taking back my sexuality, or that's me owning it. And I always try to reframe it as like, I think it's you trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
Or control a situation where you felt powerless. And this is your unconscious brain's way of taking your power back. And it's heartbreaking for me to see these headlines of these cases and people in the comments saying, oh, they must have liked it. And I just want to so badly be like, you don't get it. Read a book.
Right? Here, check this research article out. That's not what it's about at all. And people just don't understand what they haven't experienced or what people haven't educated about, which is why it's really important for people like you to keep doing what you do. Are there because I'm always like, what can we take away? What are some things that we can do? I know we talked about finding little bits of joy. Are there other tools or resources that you always turn people to, or things in your book that people can dig in and reference?
Well, I use something called the 5 V's because I wanted people to have this visual idea, like this visual reminder. When you look at your hand, say to yourself that you're built with the DNA for joy. You just forget how to access it and tap into one of the 5 V's. Most of us have 5 fingers, so that's why I use the number 5. And don't do all 5 at once, but pick 1 or 2. And so the first V is validation. Acknowledge and accept your experiences, and your emotions. And it sounds simple, but
It's
many
hard.
times we can't. Yeah, it's hard. We don't acknowledge when we're tired. We don't acknowledge when we're sad or frustrated. We just push through. But if you don't acknowledge and accept how you feel, even during the bad times, it's going to be really hard to tap into that joy. And validation is important because I liken it to being in a really dark room. You can't see anything. It's pitch black. You hear a loud crash. And some of us would start screaming. Some of us start swinging. Some would start running. But if you turn the light on and you saw, oh, it was a vase that fell, then you're like, I'm safe. You know, there's nothing here that's going to hurt me. So when you turn the light on in your emotions, that decreases the uncertainty and you know what you're dealing with. Number 2 is venting. So
That's a personal fave of mine.
and there are do's and don'ts. You don't just want to vent to everyone. You want to pick 1 or 2 people, if they're not your therapist, people that you trust, and you want to vent with intention. You want to, go into this saying, I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to come out with a resolution. You're not trauma dumping. And you want to ask for emotional consent. So you want to say, is this a good time? You don't want to pick people who are like under a position of power. Like you don't want to vent to your employees because they're not going to say no. You don't want to vent to your kids because, they're going to worry about you. So you really want to be careful about who you vent to. And venting doesn't have to be verbal. It could be through writing in a journal. It could be through praying, singing, crying, right? Get those emotions out. In my lab, when people come in, I demonstrate venting. I have like a big red balloon and everyone takes a turn trying to dunk it into a tub of water. And 100% of the time,
It shoots back
it
out.
shoots back up. Why? Because we need to release the pressure in the system. And venting is just that. You're releasing the pressure in your system. Number 3 of the 5 V's is values. So what are the things in life that give you meaning and purpose? Try to tap into those, as much as possible. Personally, it's my family, but for others, it could be faith, it could be community, it could be a cause, it could be nature. Like, figure out what it is. And if you don't know what your values are, think, is it priceless or does it have a price tag? If it has a price tag, I guarantee you, in your 5 minutes on your last, time on earth, you're not going to be like, I want to do that thing that has a price tag. I want a Porsche. No, you're going to be like,
I need to grab my Louis Vuitton bag.
Right.
You're like, nobody cares about that.
No. So think about the things that, if you had only a couple of moments on this earth, try to do more of those things. The 4th is vital. So this is, how do you take care of your body and brain because you only get one? And we talked about the importance of movement, nutrition, sleep. But, one of the things that we neglect are our relationships with people. And we did discuss about how loneliness is a problem. So think about who you have in your life, because if they are toxic, they're draining your life. Mm-hmm. If they're positive, if they're uplifting, they're adding to your life. So pour into those relationships. And then the 5th is vision. How do you plan joy in the future so you don't get stuck in the past? And, planning joy doesn't have to be big and grand. It could be a small thing. Like, for example, after you finish wrapping your podcasts, right? You're going to take like a walk or like sit and have a moment to yourself and have a tea and just reflect. All these little things are really important to keep us motivated to keep moving forward instead of getting stuck in the past. So enjoy your wins, celebrate them, and plan joy in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I've been talking a lot about values work. I love that that's a part of it, because so often we do things that aren't aligned and then we don't know why they're not fulfilling or why we don't find any joy in them in the way that we thought. And it's because it's out of alignment or something's like uncomfortable or relationship doesn't feel good. And I, for so long, never took the time to figure out what some of my values are. And I'll say like, oh, I value like honesty or loyalty. And you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But I encourage everybody taking time to like, just consider what are the things that you value. Do they have patterns to each other? Are these two very similar? And so maybe instead of, stability and community, maybe it's comfort. Maybe that's part of, I don't know. But it's, that's been really helpful for me in finding more joy in my life and in feeling like I'm doing things that are aligned with what I know I value. My tops are comfort, community. I'm forgetting the others. There's 5 that I have journaled about, but that's really helpful. What has the process of writing High Functioning taught you about your own relationship with joy?
I absolutely loved writing this book.
Really?
I looked forward to it.
Wow. I know. I've written 3 books, and each time it's a love-hate. it's like I don't have children, but it's like I birthed a child. But it's always a little love-hate. So interesting. What made it like drew you? This was your joy.
So when I started creating content a couple of years ago, it was in the context of going through a divorce. And I had a small child at the time. She's 8 now. But it was such a low point for me. And then when I started to create content, it was because my students at NYU, I teach these doctors how to create like media interviews for when the TV has to come and talk to them and all. But they were like, no one's watching TV anymore. People are online. Teach us how to do socials. And I didn't know how to do social media.
You're like, I don't know.
I had no idea. So I had to figure it out and then teach it. But then I went viral and I was just like, wow, I actually enjoy this, and then I thought back to why did I enjoy this so much? These like silly skits that are like way easier to do than doing like an on-air television interview. Yeah. But it was because back when I was a child, my dad's a pastor. He used to bring us on stage, and my siblings and I, to do these like skits. Like I was always Delilah. And I'd wear these tight outfits because like I love fashion back then. But like I enjoyed, doing these type of skits, and it was fun to be creative. And so doing these online skits, it really brought me back to that childhood creativity. And
it's like a little inner child work on accident.
Yes, on accident. And so when I was writing the book, I had to pull from all these creative parts of me, and I like really enjoyed it. So my publishers were like, I don't think we've ever seen anyone enjoy writing a book this much. And like, it was fun. Now the marketing, I did not enjoy.
It's its own, each part has it's a little tricky.
Yeah, that one like was tough because it's like all of a sudden you have to like pedal, and I don't like asking for things.
Me neither,
so,
but
yeah. But yeah, I loved writing the book, and I was sad when it was finished.
Oh, and so will you be blessing us with another one, you think?
Well, I did not enjoy the marketing part of it, so I don't know about that.
That's fair, because it comes in both. You can't have one without the other.
You can't. Like, I was not prepared for that part. Like, you have to sell your book. Like, I don't know how to sell things.
Yeah, I used to. One of my friends put together. It was called like ThinkerCon, and it was essentially for educational YouTubers. And I did a lecture on the book process because people don't know, and you get into certain pieces of it, and like contracts and this, and then the writing, and then the marketing, and like what does that look like, and how much do they help you? Anyway, I got a lot of great feedback. I think because a lot of people didn't know or were like you, and they're like, I was unprepared.
Yeah. I don't think they want to tell you because then no one will write a book.
Then they'll say no, right?
No one's gonna write a book. It's a full-time job trying to sell your book. So,
it really is. Yeah. But I'm glad that it's here, and I'm excited to dig into it more. I already did some like sleuthing online to get prepared. If someone's listening along and a lot of what you said resonated, and they feel like, wow, this is really me. I think maybe I am like struggling with anhedonia, or maybe I don't have joy, maybe I have high functioning depression. What's one gentle step or one little thing that you would hope is the takeaway for them?
Well, I would say, first of all, celebrate your win because you listened to this podcast. You didn't have to, but you were curious about the science of your happiness. So, definitely celebrate that. And understand the science of your happiness. It's such a great gift to understand what makes you so different because you are here for a reason. So when you examine the science of your happiness, be careful about the areas of your life where you're losing joy. It is that simple. Where are you losing your joy? That's where you need to focus your efforts to reclaiming your joy.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and to chat with us.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
And where do people find you? Where do they find your book?
You can find my book everywhere that books are sold. And I'll let you hold that up because I'm over the marketing.
You've got to market it.
Well, it's I really have to be appreciative to my audience because the book is a national bestseller, and I was
Congratulations.
shocked.
Did you celebrate your win?
I did.
Good.
I mean, first of all, I was shocked. I was like, people want to learn about depression, but then my publisher was like, it's about reclaiming joy. And I was like, oh yeah, they're right.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, thank you to my community. They really supported me still. But you can find me everywhere, Dr. Judith Joseph, all the platforms, and my book is sold wherever books are sold.
Yeah, wonderful. So nice to see you and talk to you.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.